Many years ago, in Berlin, Europeans sat down and subdivided our continent, at times separating a brother from our sister. After they finished doing that and colonizing us, they went ahead and taught us to fear, hate, and keep away from each other. So you are my neighbor, but I fear you, and I don't want to mingle with you. Let me give you an example and use a few African examples. Today, it is easier for a European to travel within Europe without requirement of a visa. They can trade, make money, visit each other, spend money, and the European Union area, they're making a lot of money, they're becoming rich and rich every day. In Africa, our former colonies and what they taught us still prevails. Then they mingle among each other. Today in Africa, the reality is that for an African to visit a European nation, an ordinary African, to visit a European nation, is like, let me give you an example my teacher used to use. It's like trying to milk an elephant because of the visa process. However, for a European to visit an African nation, most of our nations, it is like a walk on the beach. It's like going to have a cup of tea. But then that is not the problem. The tragedy is that now for an African to visit a fellow African within the African Union, the visa restrictions in many of our nations, among us, between our brothers and sisters, is like trying to brush the teeth of a crocodile. They came, divided us, and they have taught us to keep each other from each other. Then they're mingling with each other and making money and growing, but they have taught us to hate each other. But for us to really enjoy the true economic benefits of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, we need to behave like the Europeans and allow for the free movement of people and trade. Our development agencies, such as the African Union Development Agency and others, cannot really succeed when there are all these restrictions among ourselves. To this end, in our contribution to this continental aspiration, Kenya is committed to progressively, and we are moving very fast by the end of this year, to abolish visas to citizens from African Union member states to make it easier to invest and do business in Kenya and across the continent. We are going to open the borders of Kenya. We do not fear our fellow Africans. Come, travel to Kenya. Live, do business in Kenya. Trade, make money in Kenya. And we hope we'll get reciprocity with the rest of you. Let us open our continent so that we can make money and live together. Let us remove the shackles of colonialism that are still embedded in our heads and be able to move forward. Mr. Chairperson, Excellencies, climate change continues to ravage lives and livelihoods of millions. We must remain faithful in the implementation of decisions that we make in our sessions. Let me say something that some of you may not like. African Union needs to be self-reliant. As long as the bulk of the AU funds come from outside the African continent, we somehow will find ourselves dancing to the music that is not of our own making. Therefore, we must address the issue of reforms that will enable us to fund our own programs. Funding that comes from our friends is good, but it needs to be funding that is in support of our programs and not our lifeline. Therefore, this calls for a critical look at the architecture of the African Union and the way we implement our decisions and the way we fund this continent. It's a discussion that we must have, and we must agree to ourselves that we need to take care of ourselves so that others can support us, but we are not being told to dance. My teacher used to say that at times when you're wearing somebody's suit, you know, and you start dancing, they start telling you slow down because you may ruin that suit.
What the representative from Kenya was saying, I was really happy and I think it's something that we all should consider. Yeah. Like Professor Lumumba has said, African unity, it's something that we all should rally behind. That a common dream for Africa, a common goal for Africa, is something that will help all of us move ahead. It's something that the West do not want it to happen. It's something that the Americans are against it because they all understand that if Africa unites, if Africa speaks with one voice, Africa as a continent, as a single entity, will accomplish a lot. And so they are so scared about the concept of one Africa. They are so scared. They are working behind the scenes to make sure that we never realize this dream. That the notion of a single Africa, of one Africa, never see the day of light. Never. The West are making sure of that. And our puppet leaders, our shallow-minded leaders are cowardly dragging their feet. This whole idea of a unified Africa has been on the agenda for many, many years now. It's like when we take one step forward, we take two steps backward. We are not realizing our full potentials. We are not making any gain because we go one step forward, two steps backward. We deliberate on a certain issue like one Africa, and then we stop deliberating, and then we bring a new agenda, and then we deliberate on it, and then we pause it, and then we move to the next one. We have agendas upon agendas upon agendas, but we never come through with one. We never see one to the end. We never said to ourselves, instead of us piling agendas upon agendas, let's just pick one and make sure we get it to the end. Let's just pick one and make sure we put it to practice and see how it goes before we bring another one on the table. No one is thinking about that. When the AU meets, they bring all sorts of agendas. They talk, and then they go home. Nothing is being accomplished. Everything is like the same. African people, lot of talking, no walking. They are just like that. Even my own home country, you will see parliamentarians and senators. They will go into the National Assembly and they will have pile of documents to deliberate on or pile of things to deliberate on. And they will spend all their time deliberating on issues, wasting taxpayers' money, deliberating, and then they will come out without no concrete resolution to any of the things that they have been deliberating for the length of time that they have been deliberating. And then they will say, we've come to the end of this parliamentary session, so we will continue in the next session. And everything will be postponed to the next session. And that is how they keep on postponing and postponing and postponing. Nothing is being done. The same thing as the AU. They worry, but they never spend the time. They never take the time to really look into what they are worrying about and try to figure out a solution. Because remember, fear only comes when you do not understand what you are doing very well. For if you do, you won't have any fear. Now, the concern of a borderless Africa is that criminals will move from one country to another. But what if we have a system in place, maybe a common ID card or a common passport, a biometric one for that matter, whereby if someone commits a crime in a particular country in Africa, that information will be shared with member states of the Union. What about that? Wouldn't that help with the problem of criminality? Because if a person commits a crime in Nigeria, that information is being shared with the other members of the Union, which means that if that person moves to South Africa, he will still be identified as a criminal. If that person moves to Zimbabwe, he will still be identified as a criminal because of his ID card, because all his information is in the system. And even so, no one can really say for sure that there won't be any crimes. Because even now, with our border Africa, with all of us keeping our borders in place, there are still so many crimes in Africa that go unresolved. So African people and African leaders are just worrying over nothing. There is nothing there to worry about. There's nothing to worry about. There is so much to be gained from a unified Africa. There is so much to be gained from a common passport. There is so much to be gained from a common security system where all the nations in Africa share data on security. There is so much more to be gained from a common market. So much more to be gained. If Europe, that is way more developed, can have a common system in place, and they do not worry or they do not let the whole idea of criminality stop them from moving ahead with all their development, what about Africa? What is in these African countries that someone might want to steal or that might make the leaders to worrying about crimes in their home countries? What is there? What can people actually steal from there? So all this whole dragging of feet and stuff is just a delaying tactics. There's nothing there. They just want to drag their feet. That's just all. That's just exactly what I think. But like I said, it's just my own opinion. I believe in the African spirit. I believe in one Africa. And I believe that a unified Africa with a common passport, with a free movement of people and goods, is going to benefit the whole of Africa the most. But you guys out there, what is your take on why the African leaders are dragging their feet when it comes to Africa unifying as a single entity? When it comes to all the Africans having a common passport? When it comes to the notion that there will be a borderless Africa, that Africans can freely move from one country to another? Why are the African leaders so skeptical about this whole notion? Share your thoughts and opinions with us in the comment section below, because like always, we love hearing what you have to say. And also, do not forget to like this video, share this video, follow our Facebook page, and most importantly, subscribe to this channel, because little deed of goodwill, like the one you're doing just now, help us a lot, and we shall forever be grateful to you. So thank you very much for doing just that. And like always, see you in the next one.